welcome to Old-Timey Musings from an Old-Timer. Hi, I'm going to begin this series with explaining how I first got interested in old-timey music. So I've got to move back now to the late 1960s. I mean, I started playing guitar when I was about 13, and like all kids in those days, I expected to be in a band and be famous, be like the Beatles, but I got slightly sidetracked into folk music and started playing around the folk clubs in Manchester. At 15, I was just doing the usual sort of folky music. The thing that I was absolutely fascinated with was the sound of the banjo. Now, there weren't many country musicians, as you can imagine, playing in those days, certainly not in Manchester. There were a few people playing banjo. We had people like Frank Duffy and Harry Boardman, etc. But they were playing in the European tradition, English, Irish, Scots music, so not much that you could really latch onto as far as country was concerned. But I still loved that plunky sound of the banjo. Eventually I bought myself a banjo from a second-hand shop somewhere, and like a lot of other potential banjo pickers, I also picked up Pete Seeger's book, How to Play Five-String Banjo, the big red one. The big red book, I mean, not a big red banjo. And I carried on trying to learn banjo myself, playing around clubs, playing a mixture of music, but nothing really going down the route that I wanted to go. Although I say I'd knocked down the road that I wanted to go, I don't really think I knew at that time what the road was that I want to go down. And then I went into, there used to be a record shop in Manchester in St Anne's Square called Rare Records. And I was flicking through some of the cheap records in there, and there was a Topic album there by the New Lost City Ramblers. And it had a drawing of various instruments on the cover, and one of those was a banjo. I thought, I'll have that. Took it away with me. Got home, played it. It was an absolute revelation. This was the sort of music that I wanted to play. You know, the stuff they played on there, this is in the days of Tom Paley, John Cohen, and of course Mike Seeger. And they were just playing marvellous music. I didn't know how they did it. All multi-instrumentalists, and some of the songs though were just tremendous. So I started trying to learn them. Very difficult to learn them when you've not actually seen somebody play old-timey music, but I worked on them and tried to get some of them together in my head, and then try to play them in my own way, but and performed a few in folk clubs, but I really wasn't getting anywhere with it. Then I went to a folk club in Cheshire, and there was a band playing there doing a floor spot. The name of the band was the Dog Hobble Ramblers. Absolutely brilliant, but the people, the personnel in the band were two guys, Tom Travis and Tom Bowker, and a banjo picker called Ivan Kelsall, and they were a bluegrass band. And this was just amazing. It wasn't old-timey music, as I was getting to understand, but it was the closest thing I was going to get to it in and around Manchester. So, great, we're getting somewhere then. I made friends with them, and I was friends with them for many years after, and in fact I still went to one of Tom Travis's gigs just last year, so the individuals were still great friends of mine. And I actually learned to play some Scrug style. In absence of being able to play old-timey picking styles, the Scrug style worked for me for a while. And I played in a couple of bands, and we did a few bluegrassy numbers, so as you can see, I'm starting to get there, so bear with me. I think the biggest issue that I had is it was the frailing issue. I read about it in Pete Seeger's book, I heard about it from the sleeve notes in some of the old-timey records that I was picking up. And I sort of knew what it sounded like, but if you've never seen somebody do it, I just could not get my head around it. You have to remember, this was in the pre-digital days, so there was no YouTube channels. You couldn't see any demonstrations of people playing this sort of music, so I was kind of stumped. So I sort of put together my own hybrid style, which was a mixture of, I guess, what you call thumb lead and up picking. And that really, I got that working quite well, and I managed to perform some of the numbers by artists that I really liked. So I discovered people like Uncle Dave Macomb, Roscoe Holcomb, Frank Prophet. These are the sort of guys whose music I wanted to play. So using my hybrid style, I got approximations of the stuff that they were doing, and I started to abandon Scruggs style. The main reason being that I was primarily a singer and a performer, and if you're singing and performing on your own, it's really difficult to accompany yourself playing syncopated bluegrass banjo. So I needed to get back to the old styles. So I'd found my niche there, which kept me interested, I guess, for the next 40 years. I moved down to London, played at a lot of the clubs in London. I was still at that time playing a sort of resonator-backed banjo, but that worked because in some of the big venues in those days, they just didn't have any PA system or amplification, so you needed to get some real volume out there to be heard. So I'm playing at places like Surbiton Assembly Rooms and the Murray Cash's Town and Country Club, big venues, but I needed to be belting the music out, so I kept the resonator on the banjo, the old bluegrass resonator, and it stood me in good stead for many years. And I had a few other banjos at the time, but that was my go-to instrument. I then came across a 1911 fretless banjo. I met a young lady in a club. I think it was one in Putney, and she'd got this fretless banjo that she was looking to sell because she said she couldn't play it without frets on, and her boyfriend had offered to fret it for her, which I thought was no way should she be doing that. It was a lovely instrument, so I parted with I think about £6 for it, and took it away with me. It was battered, and it had an old vellum head which had seen better days. Strings were knackered. It had old violin pegs in the top, but still it had potential. So over the years, I started to renovate it a bit. It was a project. It got put in the shelf while other more important things had to be done. But over the last few years, I finally sort of renovated it, strung it up with nylon strings, and at last I'm starting to be able to play the sort of sounds and get the sounds out of it that I wanted to get out of it. So who knows? You may start to hear a bit of that old banjo on these podcasts at some time in the future. I love all the old time instruments, though. I just wish that I'd mastered the fiddle. That was the only one which when I listen to people like Mike Seeger playing with the New City Ramblers, and then I hear people like Alison Krauss playing nowadays, and I just think that sound is absolutely wonderful. I did buy myself a cheap fiddle, but it just wasn't right for me. I got a couple of mandolins. I thought if I can pick those, fretted, I might start to get the hand positions, the finger positions, and translate that onto the fiddle. And I think I did, made a fair fist of it, but that really wasn't going the way that I wanted to do. But it's still there in my collection of instruments. But I stuck with the banjo, returned to the banjo. Guitar and banjo, I'm afraid, those actually helped me to play most of the stuff that I wanted to play. In fact, I saw Alison Krauss playing with Robert Plant on the Raising Sand tour, and loved that old-timey fiddle playing that she managed to get out of it. And that's what I think is good. Old-timey music is now kind of getting more common. I mean, thanks to people like the Coen brothers with "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," and and the influence and music of that T-Bone Burnett puts behind their stuff. It's getting quite common now. So when I start talking about playing old-timey music, and I meet people who actually understand what it is, about my son-in-law around last Christmas, and managed a half-decent rendition of "Man of Constant Sorrow," that was quite nice to playing together and doing that sort of stuff. Mainstream musicians now, like people like Robert Plant, are actually showing. I mean, they've always had an interest in traditional American music, and now they're actually showing it in the records, in the music that they're creating nowadays, and that's really nice. So, I guess what I'm saying is that I love old-timey music, and I love some of the old-timey performers. I love the fact that there's a lot of modern musicians who are grasping it now. So that's the reason behind these little podcasts. I'm hoping to talk a bit, chat about music, musicians, talk about songs, talk about singers, maybe sing and play a little, who knows. So please send me your feedback, and I'll just keep on picking. Well, like they say, if the good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise, see you again soon. Bye.